What's up, guys? This is Wes. Week 11 in the fantasy football season. Actually, week 12 already. Only a couple more weeks for season-long leagues before the playoffs start. Going to bring you my top pivot picks for this week in the NFL FanDuel Sunday Million. Last week, I cost myself some money by leaving Sterling Shepard in my lineup and just neglecting to check it entirely. But check out the full recap of last week of my picks and of the winning lineup. FantasySmackTalk.com. Get in a little bit to the fact that I would have had Tyrod Taylor as my quarterback pivot last week, if not for Sean McDermott's bonehead decision to sit him on the bench and watch his backup replacement quarterback throw for 5 interceptions in the first half. So, regardless, just going to get into my picks for Week 12 here. Quarterback that I'm rolling out in all of my lineups on Sunday is Cam Newton. Cam Newton is priced at $8,000 even on FanDuel as the Panthers go to New York to take on the Jets. Obviously, an appealing matchup. I think that'll keep him around 8 or 10% owned, but Drew Brees and Russell Wilson should both be much higher owned. Tom Brady, Carson Wentz, and Ben Roethlisberger are each appealing as well. So even in that nice matchup and even in a good spot, Cam Newton won't be chalk this week by any means. Cam still hasn't returned to that form that we saw in 2015 or when he took the Panthers to the Super Bowl. He can obviously, though, create with his legs, which any deficiencies he has as a thrower or as a decision maker are negated by his athleticism. Gone over 55 FanDuel points with 181 total rushing yards in his last 2 games combined. And most impressively, those 55 FanDuel points came despite throwing for less than 400 yards total over that same span. So Carolina's offense seems to be trending in the right direction since they shipped Kelvin Benjamin out of town. Not coincidentally, probably Cam Newton had his best year that year in 2015 when Newton went down in that first game of the season. So just a little interesting point worth noting. But in the end for this week, the Jets have given up big games to Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, and Tyrod Taylor since week 5. And they've allowed 30-plus, or right around 30-plus rushing yards to QBs 5 different times this year. So Cam's a guy I'm pretty excited about, again, at $8,000 in New York this weekend. All right, running back, my guy this week for some reason, Kareem Hunt. Going to keep rolling him out, 7,700, hosting Buffalo. Obviously, Bill's team that's trending in the wrong direction. With Nate Peterman or with Tyrod Taylor, it doesn't matter. The defense seems to have mailed it in like the front office and the coaching staff have. So, Hunt's been pretty disappointing since those first couple weeks of the season when he, I think, had 5 touchdowns in those first couple weeks. But when the ball is in his hands, he's still obviously proven himself to be a more than capable NFL back. The problem is that the ball hasn't been in his hands enough. Obviously, to the fault of Andy Reid, something that he addressed post-game on Sunday and, pledged to fix. I don't know if we can really trust that, but regardless, in Week 11, we saw Hunt only get 4 carries in the second half, and the Chiefs were held without a touchdown the entire game, lost in overtime to the Giants in the Meadowlands in 23-mile-per-hour winds. So obviously should have been a situation in which Hunt was relied on heavily. He wasn't. Never know what's going through Andy Reid's head. Regardless, before Week 11 and those 4 weeks before Week 11, Hunt only had a 20-plus carry game once, and he had 2 games with less than 10 carries. So my point here, a lot of people are going to be scared away by Hunt, probably for good reason. There's some good, attractive running back options and just a lot of guys that don't have the question marks that Hunt does going into the week, but Hunt's upside probably higher than just about anyone's on the slate other than maybe Todd Gurley and Le'Veon Bell against the Packers. So the Bills have given up the most rushing yards to touchdowns in the NFL, and they've been obliterated by running backs lately. Duos for the Chargers, Saints, Jets, and Raiders all combined for 20-plus FanDuel points since Week 8, I believe. So I'm really buying Kareem Hunt this week. Shouldn't be more than 9% owned, and could be really valuable if he finally if Andy Reid finally decides to trust him to be the cowbell back in Kansas City. All right, wide receiver, my guy this week, Mike Evans, 7,700 on FanDuel in Atlanta to take on the Falcons. Mike Evans, if you own him in a season-long format, you're probably pretty frustrated with the guy. Someone who is considered one of the league's best 4 or 5 receivers coming into the season. Been pretty underwhelming campaign overall, and Jameis Winston's shoulder is probably a big part of that, but he's going to be held out for the 3rd straight game in Week 12, and that might not be as bad for Evans as some of his season-long owners might have originally feared. Fitzpatrick and the Buccaneers are 2-0 since Winston was sidelined, and Evans has 16 targets over those 2 games. Most importantly for Evans, though, if you take out that Week 10 dud he had against Marshawn Lattimore, I should say, and the Saints, Evans has at least 8 targets and 5 catches in all but 1 game this year. So even with the lack of production, pretty much relative to the expectations that we had for him coming into the year, still had a lot of volume, still had a lot of looks, still have a lot of opportunities to put points on the board for fantasy owners. So this week, the Falcons, they're a pretty solid matchup. They've been respectable defending the pass, but I think a lot of that value comes from the fact that line they have is so good. The pressure that they get compensates from the fact you don't have a ton of all-pro guys in Atlanta's secondary. So Evans without Jameis Winston, and again with that pretty underwhelming 2017 season, I don't think he'll be more than 7 or 9% owned on Sunday. And in a game with a 49 over-under that Vegas is projecting, which is one of the week's highest over-under, Evans has a chance to score and should get those 8 or 9 or 10 targets that he's been getting all week. So at 7,700, he's a guy that I'm rolling out confidently. Finally, tight end, been burned the last 2 weeks by Hunter Henry. Not this time. Going to go with Delanie Walker at 5,900. Delanie Walker and the Titans are traveling to take on the Colts in Indianapolis. Obviously, in an appealing matchup, but the top 4 tight ends, Graham, Ertz, Kelsey, and Gronk, are all active on Sunday. The first time that's happened in a week. So those 4 are going to overshadow guys like Delanie Walker and Charles Clay. They probably shouldn't. Clay, obviously, coming off an injury is a dart throw. But Walker, he's been pretty consistent, pretty reliable in 2017, particularly since Week 7. Dating back to October 22nd, Walker has gone over 7.8 FanDuel points in every game over that span, and he's averaging over 8 targets and 6 catches per game over that same span. So he's done all of that essentially with a pretty mediocre quarterback in Marcus Mariota. Mariota seems to be improving in 2017, though, and against the Colts team that's allowing an NFL worst 8.3 yards per pass attempt. Hopefully the entire improvement of the Tennessee Titans offense should continue. So again, the top 4 at the position are really appealing: Ertz, Kelsey, Gronk, and Jimmy Graham. But you could do a lot worse than Walker on Sunday, and if you're looking to find a guy that not a lot of people in the industry will be on, Delanie Walker at 5,900 is the one I'm targeting. So thanks for checking out the video this week. Hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving. On Thursday morning, you could check us out at Fantasy Advice. Get your lineup questions in Thursday and also Sunday. And then read this story and a bunch of other great content we have at fantasysmacktalk.com. And until then, we'll see you all next week.